Hello and welcome to Tech Talk, the Banker's video series on all things fintech. I'm Joy McKnight, Technology Editor at The Banker, and I'm here with Dave Van Niekerk, founder and CEO of MyBucks, a fintech company working to improve financial inclusion mainly in Africa. Dave, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Joy.
I just wanted to sort of find out a bit more about MyBucks and how you really push forward the idea of virtual financial inclusion.
Cool. So it's really very simple. And Africa's got more than 1 billion people on the continent. Last year, credit card transactions in Africa alone were only 1.7% of the world's credit card transactions. So we're talking about 1 billion people and only 1.7% of the world's credit card transactions. So that just shows you that financial inclusion in Africa is seriously lacking. A lot of those markets have got a lot of room for banking, financial services, credit, insurance, so forth. So mobile money wallets and fintech is the way of the future. There is no other way to do it. You can't service a population that size in remote areas as geographically spread without using technology. There's no other way to do financial inclusion in Africa. So we're doing that. We're putting technology down on the ground. We're executing effectively in 12 countries at the moment. We've got banking licenses, credit or financial services licenses, and we're basically using algorithms, apps on people's phones, even USSD, which is an old type of SMS technology for people to be able to access financial services. And so far, so good.
So where are you seeing the greatest take-up in Africa?
So it's interesting. There's a bit of a convergence of internet penetration on the one hand, smartphone penetration, and then this whole fintech wave that's sort of coming along. And it's not just fintech in Africa. It's e-commerce that will come in. It's the entire sort of online sort of tech side that's still going to boom in Africa as the online penetration comes on, as internet becomes more freely available, as cell phones and smartphones become better, because everyone's got a cell phone, but not everyone's got a smartphone. So they say in the next 3 to 5 years, we're talking 200 to 300 million more smartphones going into Africa, which is like an increase of 30% across the continent. And so we're seeing more of a take-up at the moment in the more driven economies where technology is driving. It's a Kenya, it's a South Africa, and ironically enough, spreading into the other East African markets, like even Uganda, Rwanda, where it's a combination of mobile network operators, financial services players like ourselves, banks, mobile money wallets, all coming together. So it's going to be an integrated world.
Okay, and what are the challenges to rolling out operations in Africa?
So lots. That internet connection is part of it. So internet connectivity is expensive still in Africa. Data is extremely expensive for African people as a whole. And you think about in the old days where governments were planning infrastructure for their economies, they'd be like, where do we put the roads? Nowadays, we need to be thinking as regulators, where do we put internet? Because the more connected we make our world in our country, the more connected they are to the world, the better it is for them. So we've got to think of that as the infrastructure base. Technology needs to be. So that's key for us, is being able to get more and more internet penetration into those markets, and obviously more cost effectively, because it doesn't help saying you're going to serve the middle to low income category or the poor in Africa, in remote areas in Africa, if there's no internet and if the internet's too expensive. So those are the barriers. It's the cost as well as the availability of it. Obviously, trained professionals are still a resource issue for us, trying to get enough developers, people who understand Africa and understand system development and programming. Even on the artificial intelligence side, when we're building algorithms, getting the right people on board to be able to design those that sort of understand Africa. Finding that resource on its own is hard enough, and let alone somebody with some sort of African experience. Recently, we just hired the head of digital banking from Barclays Africa to join the team, to just sort of take us to the next level in terms of banking. So that's a bit of a move on his part to say, well, I'm going to join a fintech company, moving from one of the bigger banks in the world to come and do this in a fintech space. So you'll see it's coming together.
Okay, and you talked a lot about the opportunities as well. But what I'm wondering is really there's all this burgeoning fintech activity in Africa. How do you see that developing?
I think a lot like the rest of the world. There's going to be a couple of spectacular blow-ups. 80% of those fintechs are not going to make it. 20% are going to make it and 10% are going to be successful. And because it's about execution. So everyone's got great ideas. As we speak today, there's probably been 10 more fintech startups that have launched. So great ideas, good technology being developed, but it's about starting a business. If you've got access to capital, do you understand running a business as well as developing and systems and programming? So a lot of that is, you need a bit of a combination to be able to make it successful. So there's a reason we listed in Germany was because we needed to get that credibility for regulators, that we had access to capital markets. We've got senior people on board that have banking and financial experience, And we've got the fintech element of having all these driven developers that are able to build the latest fintech sort of, how can I put it, sort of fintech initiatives to go forward. So where it's the latest algorithm, where it's the latest and greatest form of technology, where we talk to cell phones or smartphones, where we take information from smartphones, where you interpret credit differently to how a normal banking institution would have interpreted credit. Because in Africa, if you want to service somebody for credit, it's not just about the credit bureau. Because first of all, credit bureaus aren't as advanced as the first world. So you need to look at social data, you need to look at mobile network data, you need to look at transactional history on the phone, how long the person has had the SIM card, the phone, number of contacts on the phone, all of that plays a role. So it's very different taking all of that information and aggregating it and coming out with an algorithm at the end of the day says the probability of default is X, and you should or shouldn't give this person credit, and this is what you should or shouldn't charge him. And that's just one part of it. That's just the lending side. The whole banking side is even more exciting because it's about speed and convenience for people now. You can put money in and take money out much easier. And at the end of the day, that interoperability with mobile wallets is what's going to be the future for banking in Africa.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thanks, Joy.